Every time a major investment fraud is exposed, people use the same two words: Ponzi scheme. You'll hear it on television. You'll read it in newspapers. You'll see it in courtrooms. Bernie Madoff, crypto scams, fake investment funds. They all get the same label. But almost nobody asks a much simpler question. Who is Ponzi? Why did his name become the definition of financial fraud? And perhaps the most important question of all, why does a scam invented more than a century ago still work today? Because this isn't just the story of Charles Ponzi. It's the story of an idea so powerful that it continues to fool intelligent people generation after generation. Charles Ponzi arrived in the United States from Italy in 1903. Like millions of immigrants before him, he came looking for opportunity. Instead, he found failure. For years, Ponzi drifted between small jobs. He worked as a waiter, a laborer, a translator. He even spent time in prison. Nothing suggested that history would one day remember his name. Then, he believed he had discovered an opportunity hiding inside something almost nobody had ever heard of: international reply coupons. They were used to prepay international postage. Because exchange rates changed after World War I, Ponzi believed these coupons could be bought cheaply in one country and redeemed for a much higher value in another. In theory, it looked like an extraordinary arbitrage opportunity. Whether the business model was ever truly practical is still debated. But that almost didn't matter, because what Ponzi was really selling wasn't postal coupons. It was certainty. He promised investors something almost irresistible: a 50% return in just 45 days, or double your money in 90. The first investors received exactly what they had been promised, not because the business was producing extraordinary profits, but because new investors were constantly arriving. Word spread quickly. Friends told friends. Neighbors told neighbors. People who had already been paid became living advertisements. Nobody trusted Charles Ponzi because of accounting reports. They trusted him because someone they knew had already made money. The lines outside his office grew longer every day. Thousands of people rushed to invest. Some mortgaged their homes. Others emptied their savings. Entire families placed their futures into Ponzi's hands. Success became its own proof, and every successful payout attracted even more investors. Now, let's follow the money. Imagine 10 investors, each giving Charles Ponzi $1,000. That's $10,000. Instead of investing that money, Ponzi simply waited for more investors to arrive. 10 more people invested, then another 20, then another 100. When it was time to pay the first investors, their profits came directly from the money provided by the newest ones. No extraordinary investment existed. No miracle business generated impossible returns. The only thing keeping the system alive was the constant arrival of fresh money. As long as more investors entered than exited, everything appeared perfectly healthy. From the outside, the business looked incredibly successful. But beneath the surface, the system had only one source of fuel: new victims. The moment that flow slowed, everything else became mathematics. Eventually, journalists began asking uncomfortable questions. One newspaper investigated Ponzi's operation. The numbers didn't make sense. There simply weren't enough postal coupons in circulation to generate the profits he claimed. Soon, investors rushed to withdraw their money. The flow reversed. The machine stopped. Within days, the illusion collapsed. Charles Ponzi was arrested. Thousands lost their savings. The scheme that had looked unstoppable had depended on something incredibly fragile: belief. People often ask, how could anyone believe this? But perhaps that's the wrong question. The better question is, what made believing feel reasonable? The answer wasn't greed alone. It was trust. People saw neighbors receiving profits. They saw newspapers talking about Ponzi. They saw long lines of investors. They concluded that someone else must have already verified everything. Sound familiar? That exact assumption appeared again. With Bernie Madoff. With Wirecard. With FTX. Different century. Different technology. Exactly the same psychology. The uncomfortable truth: people don't usually invest because they verify the facts. They invest because they believe someone else already has. Charles Ponzi didn't invent fraud. People have been stealing money for centuries. What he invented was a system where success itself became the advertisement. Every satisfied investor recruited the next one. Every payout became marketing. Every new investor became the fuel, keeping the illusion alive. That's why his name survived. Not because he created the first fraud, but because he created one of the most repeatable. Every Ponzi scheme looks different. Different founders, different products, different promises. But the blueprint never changes. A compelling opportunity, early success, growing trust, social proof, an endless need for new money. Then, one day, the flow stops. Reality catches up. Charles Ponzi didn't just leave behind a criminal legacy. He left behind a blueprint, one that would later appear in Bernie Madoff, in countless investment scams, and even inside modern financial collapses that never called themselves Ponzi schemes. Because technology evolves, markets evolve, human psychology hardly changes at all. Every financial crime leaves two stories behind: the story people remember and the story the money tells. At Follow the Money Crimes, we investigate the second one. Because people can lie, companies can hide, markets can panic, but money always leaves footprints. You just have to know where to look. See you in the next investigation.